Hello students, how are you? This is economics lesson video for grade 11, presented by me, Mr. Fistumir Mias. It is for term 1, week 3 in lesson 4. In today's lesson, we are going to deal with the difference between movement along a demand curve and shift in the demand curve. Students, before we go to the main part of today's session, let us briefly revise the previous one. In the previous lesson, we have discussed about determinants of demand, and we have listed a number of factors that affect individual demand. Among from them, there is price of a commodity, income of consumer, price of related good, taste and preference, future expectation of change in price, climate, the size of population or the number of households, distribution of income and wealth are the major factors that we discussed in the previous session. Then, among from these major factors, we selected three of them: price of a commodity, income of consumer, and price of related goods. And these are taken as the three major factors that affect individual demand. Based on these factors, then we construct three different type of demands. There is a price demand, income demand, and cross demand. In the case of price demand, we said that it indicates assuming that other things remain constant or fixed. It is the relationship between price of a commodity and its quantity demanded. This is what means price demand. And there is obviously inverse relationship. Whenever there is a high price, less commodity is demanded and the vice versa is true. The other one is income demand. Again here, the only factor that affect demand is the income of a consumer. We assume that other factors will remain constant and the change in the income of a consumer may result differences in demand, increase or decrease. But here, in relation to the income of consumer, in order to increase or decrease the need for commodities depends on the nature of the product. Then we try to classify products into different categories: normal goods and inferior goods. In the case of normal good, there is a positive relationship with the income of a consumer, and in case of inferior good, there is inverse relationship with the income of a consumer. In the case of normal good, whenever there is an increase in the income of the consumer, demand also increases. If an income decreases, the demand for normal goods also decreases. When we look at the relationship between income and inferior goods, whenever there is an increase in the income of a consumer, the demand for inferior goods will decrease. And when there is a decrease in the income level of a consumer, the demand for inferior goods increase. Inverse relation for inferior goods, positive relationship with normal goods regarding to the income of a consumer. The third type of demand is cross demand. Cross demand indicates assuming that other things being equal or constant, the relation between the price of a commodity and the demand for related goods. Here also we have two different categories of commodities. Substitute goods are there and complementary goods are there. In case of substitute goods, there is a positive relationship between price of a commodity and demand for other commodity. If the products are substitute, there is a positive relationship. For example, we try to see the case between tea and coffee. Whenever there is an increase in the price of tea, demand for coffee will increases. Consumers earlier purchased tea, now shift to purchase coffee. Since there is a positive relationship, whenever there is an increase in the price of tea, demand for coffee will rise because consumers now shift to purchase coffee rather than purchasing tea since there is an increase in the price of tea. This is what means the relationship positive between substitute commodities. They are products which replace each other likely. In the case of complementary goods, there is inverse relationship. Whenever there is an increase in the price of one commodity, the other complement product demand will decrease. There is inverse relationship. For example, whenever there is an increase in the price of petroleum, the demand for car will decreases. This is what means complement products relationship. This is all about what we try to see in the previous session. Student, what is the difference between movement along the demand curve and shift in the demand curve? What's in your mind? Before you refer your textbook, try to give your own justification or explanation. What is the difference between change in demand and change in quantity demand? Movement along a demand curve or change in quantity demand. Assuming that other things being equal or constant, if the quantity demand increase or decrease due to a fall or rise in the price of a commodity alone, it is known as movement along the demand curve or change in quantity demand. Here, the movement is either upward or downward along the same demand curve. So, change in quantity demand is mainly resulted due to the change in the price of the commodity. Other factors will not result change in quantity demand. Bear in mind, students, change in quantity demand, the word quantity, either change in quantity demand is only resulted due to the change in the price of the commodity itself. And there will be an upward or downward movement along the same demand curve that is resulted or caused by a change in price of the commodity itself. Change in quantity demand occurs due to a change only in the price of the commodity itself. Downward movement along the demand curve is called extension of demand, while upward movement is called contraction of demand. Why we have a downward movement? Because when there is a fall in the price of the commodity, whenever there is a decrease in the price of the commodity, the quantity demand will expand, quantity demand will increase. And that change is referred as extension of demand, increase in the quantity demand. Whenever there is an increase in the price of the commodity, there will be a decrease in quantity demand. Upward movement because of the rise of the price of the commodity and the quantity demand will decrease. This is known as contraction of demand. Students, have you done the demand curve that shows extension and contraction of demand correctly? Good. Look at these two diagrams. These are the diagrams that shows change in quantity demand. The one on the left represents extension of demand, and the other in the right represents contraction of demand. There is a downward movement on the diagram that represents extension of demand. This occurs when there is a decrease in the price of the commodity, as you look at from the slide. Whenever there is a decrease in the price, quantity demand will increase or expand. That creates a downward movement, extension of demand, change in quantity demand. Quantity demand will increase due to a decrease in the price of the commodity. Shift in the demand curve or change in demand. If more or less of a commodity is demanded at the same price due to the change in factors other than price of the commodity, it is called shift in the demand curve or change in demand. There is either rightward shift or leftward shift in the demand curve itself. Now, the demand curve is entirely shift to the right or to the left. The rightward shift in the demand curve indicates increase in demand, while the leftward shift indicates decrease in demand. These are the diagrams that clearly shows change in demand. We have two diagrams, the one that shows increase in demand and the other one decrease in demand in the right. In the case of increase in demand, there is a rightward shift in the demand curve. Entirely, we are going to construct a new demand curve to the right of the initial demand curve. Here, you can observe that clearly there is no change in the price of the commodity. In the case of change in demand, there is no change in the price of the commodity. Factors other than price are resulting change in demand. For example, there might be increase in the income of consumer, increase in taste and preference, or price of related good. These are the factors that result change in demand. That's why we have a constant price line for increase in demand. In the right, when there is a decrease in demand, the new demand curve is going to be constructed to the left of the initial demand curve. Again, here also, there is no change in the price of the commodity. The change in demand or decrease in demand is mainly resulted due to the change factors other than price. There might be again a decrease in the income of a consumer or a decrease in the number of consumers, a decrease in taste preference of consumers and the likes. All these are factors other than price result decrease in the demand. And the new demand curve is going to be constructed to the left of the initial demand curve. So this is the reason and the movement of the demand curves. Okay, student, it's all about for today. To summarize briefly what we try to see in today's session, we have dealt on the difference between movement along the demand curve and shift in the demand curve, or change in quantity demand and change in demand. We try to see these two differences. Whenever we say change in quantity demand, it is mainly resulted due to the change in the price of the commodity itself. Factors other than price will remain constant, and only whenever there is a decrease or increase in the price of the commodity, the change is referred as change in quantity demand, and the change might be an upward or downward movement along the given demand curve. When there is a downward movement along the demand curve, that is represented as extension of demand, which is resulted due to a decrease in the price of the commodity. And when there is an upward movement, that is referred as contraction of demand. It is mainly resulted due to an increase in the price of the commodity. This is what we have the concepts related to change in quantity demand. In the other case, when there is a shift in the demand curve, it is mainly resulted because of the change factors other than price. Factors other than price refers to change in the income of consumer, taste and preference of consumer, price of other related goods, and the likes. All these factors may lead a shift in the demand curve entirely from its original place. So when there is a rightward increase in the demand curve or shift in the demand curve, that is referred as increase in demand. When the demand curve shifts to the right because of an increase in the income of consumer, taste and preference, or price of related goods, the demand curve will shift to the right. That refers to increase in demand. On the other hand, when there is a leftward shift in the entire demand curve, that refers decrease in demand. In these two cases, the price of the commodity will remain constant. The result is mainly caused by factors other than price. It's all about what we try to see in today's short lesson.